Success often seems like the answer to an ache you can't quite name. You tell yourself that once you achieve enough, once your work is praised and your name respected, the unease within you will quiet. Life will finally feel complete. You will finally feel complete. Have you ever promised yourself peace in the future? Whispered quietly, "When I get there, I'll rest." Yet each time you arrive at a place you once longed for, something strange happens. The satisfaction fades faster than you expected. The moment of triumph is brief, then the mind reaches forward again. A higher peak appears. A louder applause is needed. What once seemed enough becomes ordinary, and the hunger returns. Perhaps you've noticed this cycle. You work, you strive, you achieve. And soon after, a quiet voice asks, "What now? Is this all?" It is not that success is meaningless. It is that success was never designed to carry the weight you place upon it. You expect it to cure insecurity, silence doubt, and protect you from insignificance. But can it? Has it ever? Look closely at those who seem to have everything. Do they rest? Or do their minds race endlessly toward what they still lack? The ones who reach the heights rarely feel secure. They fear falling. They fear being forgotten. They fear that what they built will crumble, or worse, that no one will remember they built it. Is it not strange that the higher some people climb, the more fragile they become? There are victories that bring comfort, yes, but have they ever brought lasting peace? You achieve something and you feel proud, for a day, a week. Then your mind searches for the next task, the next mountain. And all the while a deeper question remains unanswered. If success finally arrives, will it make me whole? The truth is softer but harder to accept. Success cannot give what it does not contain. It can give comfort, opportunity, admiration, but not meaning. That is something only a well-governed soul can provide. Success can decorate your life, but it cannot sustain your spirit. There were many in Rome who wore crowns and still could not sleep. Men who commanded armies, but could not command their thoughts. Women praised at feasts, but empty in solitude. Wealth does not soothe a wounded mind. Applause does not quiet a restless heart. Perhaps the problem is not that you haven't achieved enough. Perhaps the problem is believing that achievement is where peace lives. Ask yourself, when was the last time you rested not because everything was finished, but because you allowed yourself to be present? When was the last time you felt content without needing someone to witness it? Success may come. It may not. But your life is not on hold until it does. Peace is not waiting at the end of the path. It is found in how you walk it. So much of human frustration does not come from what happens, but from believing it should have happened differently. You expect life to follow your plans. You expect people to respond as you wish. You expect events to obey the logic you created in your mind. And when they don't, you suffer. Not because life is cruel, but because you believed it would be otherwise. Control is a comforting illusion. You may influence, guide, prepare. But how often does the world listen? A single decision made by someone else can alter what you spent years building. A letter arrives with news you never wanted. A body that once obeyed suddenly refuses. The world shifts, and all your careful plans are scattered like dust. Is it not true that you can do everything right and still watch everything fall apart? And yet still, you try to control more. Outcomes, reactions, the future itself. You replay conversations in your mind, rewriting them so they don't hurt as much. You live in imagined versions of tomorrow, hoping to avoid pain before it even comes. But control over the future is no more real than control over the past. Even those with power, armies, and wealth cannot escape this truth. Emperors ruled nations, yet could not command loyalty in a friend's heart. They could order legions to war, but not stop the plague from crossing their gates. They could punish betrayal, but could not prevent it. They could build monuments to their names, but could not stop those names from fading when time decided they should. Perhaps the problem is not the world refusing to cooperate, but our refusal to see how little of it belongs to us. Ask yourself, what truly lies within your control? Not the weather, not the thoughts of others, not the turning of fortune, not even the continued beating of your own heart, but your choices, your judgments, the way you respond to what happens. These belong to you, and yet these are the very things most neglected. Imagine how different life would feel if you stopped trying to rule what is not yours and focused instead on ruling what is. There are storms you cannot stop, but you can decide how you face the rain. There are people you cannot change, but you can choose whether to answer with anger or patience. There are events you cannot control, but you can choose whether to meet them as a victim or as a student. Freedom begins the moment you accept how little you control and how much control you still have. Crowds shout a name, and it feels like eternity. But how long does the echo last? A season, perhaps a lifetime, rarely more. And yet people spend their finest years chasing it, as though it were the one thing that could outlive them. Fame seems solid when you're longing for it. It feels like stone, like something carved permanently into history. But fame is not stone. It is breath. It lives only in the minds of others, and minds are quick to change, quick to forget. Think of the names once spoken across entire empires. Names carved into arches, sung in theaters, sealed in letters with wax and gold. Men who once believed the world would never move on from them. And yet it did. The stones that bore their faces are broken. Their statues stand headless in abandoned gardens. Their victories are now little more than a line in a book, perhaps not even that. Does it not unsettle you how fast the world forgets? Even those remembered are remembered only by people who will also die, and those who remember them will vanish too. In time, there will be no one left to speak your name, or mine, or anyone else's. This is not tragedy. This is nature. What then is the worth of spending your one brief life chasing applause from voices that will one day fall silent? There were days when people lined the streets to cheer a commander returning from battle, covering his path with flowers. And there were days not long after when those same people whispered against him in the marketplace, or could not even recall his face. Nothing changed about the man. Only the wind of opinion shifted. That is the nature of fame. It belongs not to the person, but to those who offer it. And anything that can be given so easily can be taken just as easily. So if admiration comes your way, accept it with humility. If it does not, remain at peace. Let others speak or remain silent. You still have the work of your soul to attend to. Better to live in such a way that you deserve to be remembered, even if no one remembers. Because the truth is this: fame does not make a life valuable. A life becomes valuable when it is lived with integrity, whether or not anyone is watching. There is a part of you that does not seek truth or virtue. It seeks to be seen. It wants to be admired, praised, remembered. It whispers that your worth depends on how loudly the world applauds you. This is not strength. This is ego. And it is the quietest kind of prison. Ego does not ask, "Is this right?" but "Will they notice?" It does not say, "Let me help," but "Will they thank me if I do?" Have you noticed how easily a good deed becomes a performance the moment someone is watching? How quickly humility disappears when pride is fed? Ego wants reputation, not goodness. It wants the appearance of virtue, without the sacrifice that virtue demands. But what is the value of a noble act done only to be seen? What is the worth of kindness performed like theater? There were men in the Senate who spoke of honor in public and schemed for power in private. They bowed before the gods during ceremony, then betrayed their friends by nightfall. Their words were righteous, their hearts were hungry. They were praised by crowds, painted in frescoes, and yet empty inside. Ego convinces you that dignity is something given by others, but true dignity has nothing to do with public image. It is found in how you act when no one will ever know, in how you respond when insulted, in whether you remain kind when you could be cruel. Do you recognize how much of your suffering comes from fearing how others see you? Fear of being misunderstood, overlooked, replaced, forgotten. Fear that your value depends on what another person thinks. But consider this: the opinion of another is beyond your control. It lives in their mind, shaped by their fears, their upbringing, their wounds, not by your truth. So why surrender your peace to it? You do not exist to decorate someone else's idea of success. You exist to govern your soul, nothing more, nothing less. Ego is loud, conscience is quiet. Ego seeks witnesses, conscience seeks honesty. Ego looks outward, conscience looks inward. Freedom begins the moment you care more about being good than being seen as good. So let others misunderstand if they must. Let them underestimate you, ignore you, doubt you. None of it touches your soul unless you let it in. Stand quietly in your truth. There is no higher victory. There is a quiet fear that lives inside many hearts, not just of death, but of being forgotten, not just of leaving the world, but of leaving no trace upon it. You may tell yourself you want success, recognition, legacy, but often what you truly want is proof that you mattered. Does it ever trouble you that one day your name will be spoken for the last time? That even the people who love you most will one day fade into the same silence you fear? Yet this is the order of things. Everything living is carried forward by time, until time gently carries it away. Look at the graveyards, at the worn stones where names have been erased by rain. Beneath them lie people who laughed, loved, worked, suffered, dreamed. Their stories were once alive. Now no one remembers the sound of their voices. But does that mean their lives had no meaning? Memory is not the measure of value. Being remembered is not the proof of having lived well. Even the greatest among us disappear. Emperors, kings, philosophers, once feared, obeyed, adored, now reduced to inscriptions, then to dust. And the ones who wrote about them, also forgotten. Those who read their names, forgotten too. So if all must fade, what is left to fear? Ask instead, is it better to be remembered for vanity than forgotten in virtue? Is it better to have your name carved in stone if your soul was never carved by wisdom? There were soldiers who died unnamed on frozen fields, their bodies burned with no prayers, no honors. And there were rulers who had monuments raised in their image. Yet many of those nameless soldiers lived with more courage, more loyalty, more love in their short lives than the rulers did in their long ones. And now, time holds them both the same. Being remembered is fortune. Being honorable is choice. Perhaps you have felt the desire to leave something behind, a legacy, a work, a family name, a statue, a title. But legacy is only a shadow cast by time, and time is never still. It shrinks, it shifts, it disappears. Better to plant goodness in hearts than have your initials carved in marble. Marble will crumble. Goodness will not. If you live in truth, it will not matter whether anyone remembers you. And if you live without truth, it will not matter that they do. One day your name will fade, your face will be forgotten, and the world will move on. But if while you lived, you were kind, just, disciplined, and sincere, then your life has fulfilled its purpose, even if history never speaks of you. There is a simple question that reveals much about a person. If no one would ever know of your good actions, would you still do them? If all titles, rewards, applause were removed from virtue, would it remain desirable to you? So much of what people call success depends on being seen. It demands an audience. It feeds on recognition. But virtue does not. Virtue is quiet. It asks for no witness. It is complete in itself. To the world, success means reaching higher than others. To the soul, success means falling short of nothing within yourself. Consider this. Success is always relative. It shifts depending on where you stand and who you stand beside. Today, you feel accomplished. Tomorrow, you meet someone who has done more, and suddenly your pride turns to dust. Success measured by comparison will always leave you in chains. But virtue does not compare. Courage does not ask, has someone else shown more bravery? Honesty does not depend on how many people are watching. Integrity does not concern itself with reward. These things stand on their own. They are measured not by applause, but by conscience. Perhaps you have seen someone do great things and yet feel small inside, while another performs a small act with such sincerity that it seems greater than any monument. A kind word given softly to someone in despair may have more weight in the universe than the rise of a celebrated empire. Does it matter if the good you do is forgotten? What matters is whether you did it freely, purely, without the poison of vanity. There were generals who returned to Rome covered in triumph, their chariots overflowing with gold, crowds chanting their name. But their hearts were arrogant, cruel, and restless. And there were unknown physicians who tended to the dying during the plague, expecting no praise, no statue, only doing what was right. History remembers the generals. Heaven remembers the healers. So which is success? Is it not better to sleep with a clean spirit than to lie awake in silk with a troubled one? To be small in the eyes of the world, but great in discipline and compassion. Wealth, gold, property, titles, these belong to fortune. She gives them and takes them as she pleases. But character, this belongs to you. No thief can steal it. No emperor can grant it. No crowd can remove it. So if you must strive for something, strive not to be better known, but to be better. Not to be admired, but to be true. Not to seem good, but to be good. The world may never applaud you. It may never speak your name. That is no tragedy. But to die never having been just, compassionate, honest, or self-controlled, that is tragedy. Live in such a way that even if no one sees your goodness, the gods will know, and you yourself will know. And that will be enough. Fame is loud in times of victory, but it grows silent among the dying. There is something about war and plague that strips life of its illusions. Titles, honors, and public admiration mean very little on the battlefield or beside the sickbed. When the air reeks of smoke and burning villages, when men cry out for mothers who are no longer there to answer, when the strongest soldier falls to a fever no blade could have delivered, glory becomes a faint echo, not a shield. In those years on the northern frontier, men marched with hopes of medals, recognition, and songs sung in their name. They left behind wives and children, promising to return triumphant. Yet once the arrows flew and the sky filled with ash, something changed. The ground did not care how admired they were. Steel did not soften because a man was loved at home. A storm did not spare the tents of generals. And when plague followed war, as it often does, death showed even less preference. It took farmers and senators, soldiers and noble-born children. It walked through marble halls as easily as it crept through the slums. Smoke from funeral pyres darkened the sky. The once busy streets of Rome echoed with silence. It was then that I learned how weak applause is against the truth of mortality. What is fame to a dying man? What is recognition to a grieving mother? What is victory to a child too young to understand why her father will not come home? Men once cheered my name in the forum. Senators bowed, coins bore my image, statues were raised in my honor. Yet at night, when illness entered our chambers, when one of my own children gasped for breath and slipped quietly from this life, not one statue could bring comfort. Not one cheer could stop the tears. Do you see? Applause cannot hold your hand when life fractures. Bronze and marble do not speak your name in tenderness. The emperor and the beggar both lie silent in the grave. So what remains? Only the life you lived inwardly, only the character you forged when no glory could be found. I saw soldiers, poor, forgotten men, give their final cup of water to a friend. No audience, no reward, just pure, silent goodness. And I saw leaders, celebrated, admired, step over the suffering to preserve their image. One will be remembered by history, the other will be remembered by eternity. Glory fades quickly. In the heat of war, men shout your name. In the cold of death, they speak only of who you were, not your victories, not your wealth, but your kindness, your restraint, your courage without cruelty. So learn from war, learn from plague. You are not as in control as you believe. You are not as permanent as you hope. And nothing you gather, no throne, no praise, no monument, will outlast time. Let this humble you, not break you. Let it shape you into someone who seeks not to be admired, but to be worth admiring, even if no one is watching. History makes immortality seem desirable. Kings build monuments so their names will not fade. Poets write so their words may echo beyond their lives. You may even catch yourself thinking that being remembered is proof you mattered. That legacy is the answer to your fear of being forgotten. But step back and ask yourself, remembered by whom and for how long? Think of those who walked the streets centuries before you, merchants, fathers, mothers, soldiers. They had hopes, dreams, rivalries, laughter around dinner tables. And now, their names are dust, their voices are gone. Even the graves that once belonged to them have crumbled or been forgotten beneath new foundations. And what of emperors, kings, and conquerors? Their statues stand, but even those wear away under rain and time. Their images fade on coins. Their deeds are misremembered, retold, rewritten. Whatever legacy they sought to preserve is no longer in their control. What survives of them is not who they truly were, only what others choose to remember. and even that memory is shaped more by storytellers than by truth. How often do you think of your own great-grandparents? Do you know their fears, their regrets, the way they smiled? Perhaps you know their names. Perhaps even that will fade after another generation. So if even your own blood will one day forget your voice, why cling so tightly to the hope that the world will remember you? There were days when statues were raised in my honor, when crowds shouted my name in the forum, and I knew, even then, that the same stones would one day erode, the same voices would one day fall silent. Not even Rome, in all its grandeur, will last forever. Entire civilizations once believed themselves eternal. Now they are ruins studied by scholars and walked upon by tourists. You worry about whether your name will survive time. Yet name and reputation exist only in the minds of other people, and their minds are as mortal as yours. When they are gone, so too is your legacy. So you see, fame does not grant immortality. At best, it delays forgetting. But the soul does not need to be remembered to have lived well. A kind act, done quietly, shapes the world more than 1,000 loud declarations. A life lived with humility, courage, and compassion is complete in itself, even if no one writes it down. The universe does not weigh your legacy. It weighs your character. Ask yourself, would you still do what is right if no one knew? Would you still act with honor if no history would record it? Would you still love, still forgive, still stand firm in virtue, even if the world turned its back and never spoke your name again? If your answer is yes, then you are free. You are no longer a servant to legacy. You do not need to be remembered to have mattered. You do not need to be immortal in history to have lived fully in truth. Let others chase eternity through monuments and songs. Your eternity lives in this breath, this choice, this moment. And when you finally leave this world, whether your name survives or disappears like smoke, your soul will know the only legacy that ever mattered. You lived rightly, even when no one was watching. Praise can intoxicate you. Blame can wound you. But both are nothing more than passing sounds, carried on the breath of others. You suffer because you give them power, because you believe that what people say about you is a reflection of who you are. But is it? Think of how easily opinions change. Today you are admired for your success. Tomorrow you are mocked for your failures. The same crowd that cheers your name can, with a single rumor, call for your downfall. Their words do not flow from truth, but from emotion, envy, fear, admiration, ignorance. So why anchor your worth to the most unstable thing in this world, the judgment of others? There were times when the Senate praised my decisions, calling them wise and noble, and other times when those same men whispered that I was weak, that I lacked ambition, that I was too forgiving. I learned quickly. If you live for their approval, you will die from their disapproval. Praise is pleasant, but it does not make you better. Blame is painful, but it does not make you worse. What you truly are does not change, because someone speaks differently of you. A sculptor's opinion cannot alter the marble. It can only reveal what was already within it. So ask yourself, what is praise? Nothing more than a sound from another mouth. What is blame? The same. Both fade as soon as they are spoken, yet you let them rule your peace as if they were carved in stone. Have you noticed how praise often feeds the ego, while criticism wounds pride? This is because the ego is always hungry to be known, to be applauded, to be considered important. But ego is an illusion, a false image of yourself that you build from the reflections in other people's eyes. When they like you, ego grows. When they don't, ego breaks. And so, you live as a slave, not to truth, but to mirrors. Better to live in such a way that your mind remains steady whether you stand among applause or silence, whether someone calls you great or calls you nothing. True peace is found when neither praise lifts you nor blame pulls you down. Remember, people do not see you. They see their version of you. Their judgments are shaped by their own fears, desires, wounds, and ignorance. Some will hate you without reason. Some will love you without knowing you. Should their confusion shape your identity? Consider how short-lived both praise and blame truly are. How many once famous names are now unknown? How many once scorned men are now honored? Time washes away both applause and insult, like waves smoothing the shore. So what remains? Only this: did you act with virtue? Were you honest when it was easier to lie? Were you kind when it brought no reward? Were you courageous when fear pressed against your chest? These are the questions that matter. Not, what did they think of me? But who was I when no one was watching? Let people speak. Let them praise. Let them condemn. Let them think what they wish. Your task is not to manage their opinions. It is to govern your soul. Once you understand this, you become untouchable, not because no one can hurt you, but because their words no longer decide who you are. What remains of a person when the applause stops, when the crowds disperse, when letters fade, when statues crumble? Nothing but the life they truly lived, the quiet, unseen choices, the character they cultivated when no one was watching. History remembers victories, wars, monuments, and names. But virtue, real virtue, doesn't need to be remembered to be real. Some of the greatest acts of courage, compassion, and restraint were never written in any book. A soldier sharing his last bit of bread with a stranger. A mother forgiving her son. A man choosing honesty over comfort when no one would have known the difference. These lives will never be carved into marble, yet they are more noble than many whose names are shouted in forums. You see people chase legacy as if memory were proof of greatness. They want to be quoted, honored, repeated in conversation long after they're gone. But what does it matter if generations know your name, if your soul is empty of integrity? What does it matter if cities rise statues for you, if you were cruel to your family, unjust to your people, or ruled by pride? There were emperors before me, some feared, some loved, and most of them are now only names on old lists, barely recalled even by scholars. Their faces are worn on coins no one uses. Their words are lost except for fragments, and thousands more, who lived quietly with dignity and kindness, have no names recorded, but their lives were no less meaningful. So ask yourself, not, will I be remembered, but did I live well while I was here? Did you act with justice when it was easier to ignore what was right? Did you speak with kindness even when anger pressed at your tongue? Did you help someone who could give you nothing in return? Did you choose humility when ego begged to be fed? These are the things that matter, not how many knew your name. There is freedom in not needing an audience. When you stop performing for the crowd, your actions become pure. You are no longer generous for praise, brave for admiration, or patient to appear wise. You do what is right, simply because it is right. Live as though no historian will ever write your story. Live as though no monument will ever be raised in your honor. Live in such a way that, if all memory of you vanished from the earth, the world would still be better because you existed. In the end, you take nothing with you. Not the titles, not the applause, not even your name. What remains is only the imprint your soul leaves on the world, the quiet good you did, the love you gave, the truth you stood for. One day, someone will speak your name for the last time. The world will move forward, as it always has. But if you lived well, if you lived with virtue, then you have already achieved the only kind of immortality that matters, not in memory, but in the fact that for a brief time you lived in harmony with nature, with reason, with goodness. And that is enough. You try to outrun time. You chase achievements as if they could protect you from being forgotten. But time does not keep what you give it. It takes empires, it takes names, it takes even the memory of those who once ruled the world. Stand in any cemetery, and you will see this truth. Stones where names once stood proudly, letters worn away by rain. A life that was once everything to someone, now quiet, unspoken, gone. Death does not wait for you to finish your plans. It does not care if you are loved, admired, feared, or unknown. It arrives in palaces and in alleys. It takes the general and the foot soldier. It closes the eyes of kings and servants the same way. And when it does, the world continues. Does this thought frighten you? Or does it free you? You suffer because you want life to remember you. You want your name to stay, your work to last, your voice to echo. But the truth is simple. Almost everything you do will be forgotten. Not because it didn't matter, but because time is vast and you are human. So then, what is the point of living well if nothing remains? The point is this: virtue was never about being remembered. Goodness was never meant for monuments. The reward for living rightly is not fame. It is peace. It is being able to close your eyes each night, knowing you did not betray your soul for something as fragile as approval. It is walking through life unchained by praise, unbroken by criticism. It is loving people knowing they will one day fade. It is giving your best knowing time may never credit your name. When death comes, ask yourself, will it matter then how many people knew you? Or will it matter only whether you lived with honesty, with courage, with compassion? Whether you were kind when you could have been cruel? Whether you stood by your principles when it cost you something? Whether you loved people without needing them to applaud you for it? One day, your body will return to the earth, your name will stop being spoken, and the world will move on. But if in this short life you chose to live with integrity, with humility, with love, then you did not live in vain. So let go of the need to be remembered. Let go of the hunger for statues, applause, legacy. Let history forget you. Just do not forget who you are. Live quietly, live bravely, live truthfully. Let your life be its own proof, needing no witness. And when your final moment comes, may you say, not that you were known, not that you were praised, but that you lived as a human ought to live, present, thankful, unafraid to vanish when nature calls you home.